Hello? Hello? Start? Okay. Welcome to our fourth session today. It's basically, it will be basically a lecture made by Dirim Özgur, who is an independent researcher in Sarajevo currently. He was a professor in Istanbul. He came to Sarajevo in 2009. He's also a member of the Communist Party of Turkey and was the representative of the Communist Party here from Turkey here for the Balkan region. What is interesting for me is he's an anthropologist and he did a comparative study of football fans in Sarajevo, between Sarajevo and Željeznica before. But today he will speak about rather more serious matter in relation to the Neo-Ottomanism and the role of Turkey in the region, but also from the perspective of what is going on today in Turkey and what is the identity issues in Turkey and how is this related to the issues of historical sense and how things moved and how did we get here from the beginning, from the revolution in Turkey till today. What may I add? It would be great if we could make this more interactive. Maybe you can add some questions in the middle of lecture. It would be interesting. Perspective of this lecture will be more concerned with historical issues rather than today's issues, because there believes we believe the things related to AKP, Erdogan and Davutoglu today, it's rather familiar to majority of population, and these data you can find on the internet, but in relation to understanding fully Turkey today, it's needed to have this historical background that Dirim will present. Okay, you can go.
So it works. Okay, fine. In fact, today's lecture may be something that is out of my scope and field of study, because I have never studied during my academic years. I've never studied about Ottoman or Turkish national identity or something like this. But since I came to Sarajevo in 2007, I'm somehow forced to include this scope into my academic sphere, because there are many misconceptions that I have seen in Bosnia about Turkish identity and Ottoman identity as well. So today's subject is Neo-Ottomanism, the Trojan horse of imperialism in the region. Now I've got a question. I wanted to start with this question. I will ask you, to the audience, how many years did Turks dominated Bosnia? 400? 500? Maybe 350, maybe you can say less, but more or less it depends on from your perspective, 300 years to 500 years. But I will ask you, I will tell you that Turks had never dominated Bosnia. Turks had never been here. If it was, then you will be all speaking Turkish now. Okay, you have got a lot of Turkish words in your language. Probably something like 3,000 Turkism, Turkish originated words. But I will say you that 90% of those words which you think it is Turkish are of Arabic, Persian or Greek origin. So Turks never had been here, but Ottoman Empire was here. We have to make a difference from this, and that made me to make a speech more on that subject. Instead of talking only about Neo-Ottomanism and its political aspects today, I wanted to show to Bosnian audience, I think that most of you are from Bosnia, I just would like to make it clear what is Ottoman, what is Turkish. So is Turkish equal to Ottoman, or why Turks became Ottoman, and what is Ottomanism will be the subjects which I will be dealing more, and then at the end I will try to show what were the bases of Neo-Ottomanism. I will not mention it in details, but for those who doesn't know that the Turkish mythology depends on the exodus of Turkic tribes from Ergenekon, which is a mount in Central Asia. And the Turkic mythological heartland is Altai Mountains, which is in between China, Mongolia, and Russia today. If we look at the map, this is Altai Mountains, the place where, I mean, we are, according to our mythology, according to the Turkish mythology, that the Turkic tribes had migrated from Altai to Anatolia today. The migration started something like 1,300 years ago, and it somehow still continues through Germany or something like that. So, For those who doesn't know, mostly the Turkic tribes were nomadic. Of course, if they were settled, they couldn't come here. And there were ongoing clash between Turkic tribes with the Chinese settled civilization. And it was a long-lasting emulation on settled culture, because you are fighting with a country, with a culture, Chinese culture, which is settled for more than 3,000 years. And so you somehow envy them, envy their civilization, envy their houses, envy their dresses, etc., everything. And this is a story of our history, that we always have got jealousy over settled cultures. Sometimes we destroyed them all, but mostly we were under their effect. Except Uyghurs, I will not mention about them, but Uyghurs are the only Turkic tribe which had succeeded in settling in today's Western China. But there is a story how Turks became Muslim, because Turks were totally, mostly shamanist, because of, an outcome of nomadism, that the shamanist beliefs were more closer to the cultural life of the Turkish people, but we somehow became Muslim in the 8th century. I will make it very simple, I will somehow caricaturize it, that when we were on the way from Central Asia to Anatolia, we saw two armies that were fighting to each other, and our Han asked, who are those who are fighting? And one of his members, warriors, said that, okay, Han, I don't know the one who are a bit black, but I know the others, they are Chinese, they are our enemies, So okay, we don't know the other one, but let's attack Chinese. And that's how we became close to Arabs, and then we became Muslimized. It is just a caricature of the story, but reality is not very much different from this. Fighting against Chinese with the Arabs, we became closer to Arabs, and because of their settled and civilized culture, we became under effect of Islam very easily. This is very common, that nomadic tribes are very commonly under effect of settled cultures. And so, a story of Islamization of Turks began by 750. It was even before earlier, because what I made is just a caricature, but Islamization of Turks began by 650, by the visiting mullahs, or visiting religious people to Central Asia. But somehow, when Turks became Muslim, they had got an understanding of a sort of a syncretic version of Islam, and it is what we call Alevism or Bektashism, which is syncretic, a union of shamanism and Shia understanding of Islam. So this is what we have today, Alevism and Bektashism. And of course, on the way from Central Asia, we were settled on the Iranian steppe, and then later on we came to Anatolian steppe. We were in the army of Abbasi regime in Islamic civilization, and there had always been, for more than 1,000 years, a Persian and Arabic cultural influence through religion. Arabic influence through religion, and Persian influence through bureaucracy and through administration. And of course then, because of the effects of the cultural influence, there had always been a political superiority of Arabic and Persian culture against Turks. And still, the Turks had got emulation, jealousy, over the settled culture of Arabs and Persians. In 1071 is the date when there was a war between Byzantine and the Turkish army, the Seljuk army. It was in 171 in Manzikert. It was ended with the total defeat of the Byzantine army, because this is also a funny story, because in the Byzantine army there were a lot of soldiers, warriors from some tribes from Balkans or from that region, which were also had got Turkish cultural background, and they came to the warfare and they saw that against whom they are fighting, they speak the same language. So they changed their sides during the war, and that was how the Turks were victorious against the Byzantine Empire. Of course, what we read in the Turkish history textbooks in the schools are different. Byzantine Empire was 300 people, we were 70,000, but we brave Turks, we are very brave in the warfare, so that we defeated them. But it is in fact not correct that most of the Byzantine warriors had changed their side during the war. But the fact is that in only 6 years, almost the whole Little Asia, Anatolia, was invaded by Turks. But how many Turks? Now the historians and archaeologists say that the number of the Turkish people, were not exceeding 1 million people. In those ages, population of Anatolia was somewhere more or less about 5 million. So, I mean, today it's also very funny, because if we look at the DNA of the Turkish people, we can see only 20% of them have got genetical heritage from Central Asia. I mean, there is a story, it was some 10-15 years ago, that a German archaeologist found some fossils, some bones, skeletons in some village close to Burdur, which is close to Antalya. And with this skeleton, it was from Ionian period, which was 2,500 years ago. And then he compared the DNA structure with the locals. Who thinks that they came from Central Asia? And it was the same. So can you imagine that you think that you came from Altais 1,000 years ago, but in fact, you are Greek of origin, you know. So it was really, could be a nightmare for the locals, I don't know. And after that year, when those 1 million tribal warriors flowed into Anatolian heartland, they settled in different regions. And different tribes, for example, just to give an example, the tribe called Salur, they were settled around Konya, and they established a princedom called Karaman Oğulları, sons of Karaman. Karaman, not Karamazov, but Karaman or something else. And Kayı, the tribe Kayı, settled somewhere close to Bursa, and their leader, Osman, established his princedom, and now we know them as Ottomans. Here is it's a very complicated map. I mean, at that time, of course, you cannot know the definite borders of those princedoms, beyliks, those Anatolian Turkish beyliks, and you see, Ottomans were neighboring with the Byzantine Empire. But the others, especially the Karamans, which were the superior among other tribes, they were in the Anatolian heartland. Ottomans had somehow enjoyed to have border with Byzantine Empire. I mean, how? Because Byzantine Empire is strong, but Ottomans enjoy being bordering with Byzantines. How? Because they had got support from all of the Turkic tribes when they were fighting against infidels, Christians. And all the Ghazi, or Islamic warriors, they all helped in their fight against Byzantine Empire. But when Ottomans wanted to fight against Karamans or other beyliks, they had got difficulties. So until some time, until the conquest of Istanbul, let's say, Karamans were thought to be leading Anatolian tribes, Anatolian beyliks. But Ottoman beylik enjoyed bordering with Byzantines and conquesting Istanbul, and then after conquest of Istanbul, they could beat the other beyliks and establish their empire. Here, I just have to mention some words here. If you will understand it better, I will say you that it is like Ottoman Empire was something like Krajina in today's Croatia, you know, because they were defending Islam, like how they were defending Christianity in Krajina, so they were located in that area and they could preserve their culture and political sphere better. And Ghazi is called veteran warriors, and Alperans, veteran dervishes. They are religious people, but they are also taking part in the religious warfare. They gave full support to Ottoman beylik during their fight against Byzantine Empire. Ottomans were then strong against tekfur. Tekfur is the plural form of kafir, which means infidel in Arabic language, but they were weak against the Turkic tribes. I have already mentioned those issues, but I just have to mention that even before conquest of Bosnia by Ottoman Empire in the 15th century, there were flow of dervishes, Alperans and Ghazis in Bosnia as well, but mainly to Kosovo and Albania as well. So it didn't start only in the 15th century. It was started 200 years before. I mean, I don't know the story of Tekia in Blagaj. How many years?
No, it's not before. It was built after the Ottoman conquest of the one part of Bosnia, because
there
the
are some
kingdom didn't fall until 1463, but before of that, Ottomans already conquered the parts of
Anyway, I don't know that, but for example, in Macedonia or in Kosovo, you can see some tekis which dates until 13th century, before 13th century, you know. And here are some dates. 1389, Kosovo Poli. I'm sure that you all know about the history, that the gate of Balkans were opened to Ottoman conquest, and it is also a very crucial point for the Ottoman history, because it was a time when Ottoman Beylik or Ottoman state could go forward to west. And then 1402 is the Ankara Poli. This is one of our catastrophes. I mean, in the Ottoman history, it's a victory, but for us, I'm of Karaman origin, and for us it is a tragedy. Like, we can make a similarity between the Serbian understanding of Kosovo and Karaman understanding of Ankara Poli as well. And for example, in that war, in 1402, it was a warfare between Ottoman and Mongols, or better to say, which is written in our history textbooks, it was a warfare between Turkish army and the Mongolian army. But the thing was that, in the Ottoman army, a lot of Serbian soldiers, warriors, were recruited. And in Mongolian army, more than half of the warriors were of Turkish origin, from Anatolia. So it was in fact a Turkish-Turkish, or Turkish-Serbian, or Turkish-Bosnian war. It can be defined as something like this. And in 1952, Istanbul was occupied by Ottomans, followed by conquest of Bosnia, and only after that, 3 years after that, when they solved their problem with the Byzantine Empire, when they solved their problem in the Balkans, then only after that they could start conquesting Anatolia. Before that, they couldn't. But when they became empire, then they could have the power to fight against Christians. So this is what I would like to say, that since their establishment, that Ottoman Beylik, I mean, they were established in 1299, they had got some sort of struggle against Turks in Anatolia, which was more crucial than their struggle against Serbs or Bulgars or whatever. Because, I mean, during that time, Balkans did not have that sort of economical activity when you compare it with Beirut or with Baghdad or with Damascus or with Cairo, you know. So the way to Damascus or the way to Cairo was closed by Ottoman Beyliks. And when they had got this chance, they started their activities against Turkish culture in Anatolia. I mean, genocide, I use it in apostrophe because, I mean, it is a controversial term, but we can talk about some sort of, maybe not genocide, but massacres committed against Turkish tribes in Anatolia, which resulted with the exile of Karamans to Balkans. I mean, most of the Macedonian Turks, or the Turks living in Bulgaria today, are of Karaman origin. And among those sultans, Yavuz Sultan Selim, who is the grandson of Fatih Sultan Mehmed, is one of the most eminent figures, because he has got a life, he started his life with a struggle against his father. First, he made a coup d'etat against his father, he got the power, and he tried to kill his son, because he was afraid that his son will do the same thing which he did to his father. And do you know who is his son? Maybe you know.
Which Sultan?
Sultan Selim, the first one.
The first one, Suleiman.
Suleiman the Magnificent. Now we will watch it in Bosnia, this series, you know. So, and of course, I mean, he was not only in struggle against his father and his son, but also he was in struggle against his own people, against Turks. So he committed massacres against Bektashi population in Anatolia, and today, for example, in Turkey, Bektash, Alevi Bektash belief is something which is only limited to the mountains parts of Turkey, because they couldn't live in the city centers. Because if they could, they would be killed. It's easy. And Ottoman Empire occupied Arabia as well, Mecca and Medina. So now Sultan Selim was caliphate as well, and claiming to be the leader of the Islamic world. And of course, when he was fighting against Turks, he was against the Turkomans, the Turkic tribes. He was doing it because those Turkic tribes were in collaboration with Safavi regime in Iran. Because they had got similar religious views. I mean, in Iran, they also believe in 12 Imam and Alevism, or in Bektashism, there's also a special value committed for 12 Imams. In the Ottoman palace, for 500 years, there was a common phrase, edrak bi edrak. etrak is the plural form of Turks, and idrak is to understand, and B is negative. So, Turk who cannot understand. Because Turkish is a person who is nomadic, who is living in the mountain, so he cannot understand. He doesn't know how to read and write, but who can understand this? Who knows the Arabic culture? This who knows the Persian or the Greek philosophy can understand everything, but this nomadic Turk cannot understand anything. So it was a common phrase in the Ottoman Empire. And if you will look at the genealogy of the Ottoman empires, you will see that among 34 of them, only 3 of them were married with Turkish women. All the 31 of them, including Sultan Süleyman, Yavuz Sultan Selim, Fatih Sultan Mehmet, they all married with women from kafir, you know, from un-Muslim countries. And they created somehow a new culture in the palace in Topkapı in Istanbul. It was Ottoman culture. It was a mixture of Persian, Arabic, Byzantine. I mean, the law system, for example, or the administrative system of Ottoman Empire was totally a copy of Byzantine Empire. And Ottoman language was not Turkish. I mean, for example, there is a poet, Yunus Emre. Yunus Emre lived in 13th century. I can understand his poetry. I mean,
you can, or you can?
I can. Which was written 700 years ago, but I cannot understand anything which was written 100 years ago. Because it's not Turkish. What Yunus Emre wrote was Turkish, I can understand it. But what was written by those writers 200 years ago, 100 years ago, I cannot understand anything. I need a dictionary, not only a dictionary, but I need to know something about Arabic grammatics and phonetics of Persian. Otherwise, I cannot understand. So, they created a new aristocratic language. So that's why Turks were not here, but it was Ottomans. Gazi Hüseyin Begova, who was the grandson of Bayezid, was not Turkish, maybe genetically Turkish, but he was representing the Ottoman culture. And most of the Begova class, they accepted Ottoman ideology. They did nothing to do with Turkishness, but they accepted this Ottoman ideology. They studied Ottoman language, which was a mixture of Turkish, Persian, Arabic, and they know how to write Ottoman script, Arabic script, but they didn't know anything about Turkish culture. So that's why I say that Turks had never been here, but Ottomans were surely, they were here, and maybe better to say that Ottomans were you. I mean, sometimes when I speak with some Bosnians here in Sarajevo, I realize that they are more Ottoman than me. Because I don't have, I mean, they exiled my parents to Macedonia, and then after 500 years we could go back to Anatolia, to our mainland, you know. But they didn't exile you anywhere, you know. You served for them, your Begova served for them. But, I mean, my grandfather, my ancestors were just variants, you know. You were Begova, so you were more Ottoman than me. And, but during that time I have to say that those Turkic tribes who were exiled to Balkans, and also Bosnians who firstly accepted the Bektashi version of Islam, they also converted into Sunni Islam as well because of their loyalty to the past. I mean, better to say, because of their class profits. I mean, you are aristocratic class, so you should do what your sultan asks you to do. So, I mean, and then when Habsburgs came, they could also be loyal to the Habsburg Empire. If there will be some, you know, let's say, Bantu, if Bantus came, they will be Bantu as well, you know, because, you know, money doesn't have religion, simply. This is the basic rule of capitalism anyway. Ottoman model in organizing society was called millet. Millet is not nation. Millet is nation, but millet is more like folk. So they were talking about Islamic millet, or Jewish millet, or Catholic millet, Orthodox millet, whatever. And it was defined, society was divided among religions, not among ethnic groups or nations. Anyway, at that time, we cannot speak about, in modern sense, we cannot speak about nations. It was 200, 300 years ago, before the French Revolution. But when the bourgeois revolutions appeared in Europe, and when the nation states began to appear, emerge in the Western Europe and then followed by Eastern Europe as well, we see nation began to become superior against millet. Now, I mean, a Serb who was thinking that he's in the Orthodox millet, Orthodox sphere, he realized that he is not Orthodox only, but he's also Serb. And, for example, or another person who realized that he's Catholic, or another one who realized that he's Arabic, he's not only Muslim, but he's Arabic, he's Kurdish, or he's Armenian. So, with this bourgeois revolutions, the minorities, or the different peoples of Ottoman Empire, they began to realize their national identities. What we call, invention of tradition, invention of nations. You can speak about, give reference to Benedict Anderson or Eric Hobsbawm, whoever you wish. The idea of 19th century intellectuals in Ottoman Empire was then Ottomanism as a reaction against this. So Armenians were seeking for a free Armenia, and Serbs were making riots against Ottoman Empire with Bosnians. There was Greek resistance against Ottoman Empire, so how can we keep this country all together? So they found out that we can establish an ideology called Ottomanism. Ottomanism, better to start from this, in 1839, the empire, the Sultan, had to sign Gülhane Hattı Hümayun. It's an Arabic thing, but I have to say it's better to recognize it like Ottoman Magna Carta. So there was a script signed between the Sultan and the nobles, Neo-Ottomanism, sorry. But however, you defend Ottoman Empire, you establish a society in 1865, you claim that with this ideology we can keep the whole empire together, but at the end, after 20, 30 years, there is no empire anymore. So you have to find another thing, another ideology. The same intellectuals who came with the idea of Ottomanism started with a new ideology, which is Turkism. I will pass a bit quicker because time is passing by. The funny thing, the controversial thing about the ideology of Turkish nationalism or Turkism is that it has got origins not from Istanbul, because Istanbul is not Turkish. It was Ottoman, but it has got origins from Tatarstan, Russia, from Crimea, Ukraine, and from Diyarbakir, the Kurdish region. Or in that time it was Kurdistan, namely. I mean, it is also controversial because the first time Kurdistan was used was during the Ottoman Empire. So Gasperinsky was from Crimea. Ziya Gökalp is a sociologist, a Durkheimian sociologist. He was from Diyarbakir, which is at the heartland of Kurdistan, which was at the heartland of Kurdistan. And Yusuf Akçula is from Ulyanovsk. I mean, do you know another person who was born in Ulyanovsk as well?
Yes.
Yes, okay, fine.
Yes.
His names are Vladimir Ilyich, isn't it? So we know the same person. And so they were arguing for Gasperinsky, Ziya Gökalp, and Yusuf Akçula. They were supporting the idea of union of Turks. So they were not anymore considering about union of Islam, but they were considering about union of Turks. So this was, in fact, a counter-ideology against Ottoman Empire. So it followed. Not very long afterwards, the collapse of Ottoman dynasty in 1918, and the Liberation War, and the main ideological resources of this Liberation War was Turkish nationalism. And for parentheses, I have to put it in parentheses that there was support from Soviet Russia for weapons. And after 1923, we are facing with ongoing process of revolution in Turkey for 15 years, until the death of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. There are 6 pillars of Kemalism. Republicanism, that the state should be established on the ideology of republic. Secularism, that religion should not be involved in the work of politics anymore. And populism, that things should be done for the society, but not for only one class, nobility or whatever. Nationalism, statism, and revolutionism. Those are the 6 pillars of Kemalist ideology, which is, I mean, every child in Turkey should know it one by one. And But the thing is that for 600 years, you lost everything about being Turkish. For 600 years, when there was something about Turks, they were saying Edrak be Edrak. They were swearing on Turks. So you had to do something, you know. Then at that time, in 1923, Mustafa Kemal not only established the Republic, but he also established some institutes, like Institute of Turkish History, Institute of Turkish Language. And they began to find out new words, they began to find out new historical artifacts. Luckily at that time, Hungarians were also looking for their genetic background, so they found Turkish ruins in Central Asia, you know. And during that time, there were even some crazy ideas that even the Hittites or Sumerians had got Turkish background or something like this, which nobody believes it anymore. But from this time period, 1923 to 1938, we can call this time period as awakening of the Turkish identity. The last awakening in Ottoman Empire. You know, I mean, the Armenians had already established their national identity, Serbs did it 200 years ago, Greeks did it 150 years ago, and now it was time for Turks to establish their identity. They did it, and the aim for this new identity was not for some cultural reasons, of course, for something for hobby, but to create a new bourgeoisie. Because the Greek bourgeoisie, I mean, which were holding the main manufacturers and factories in Turkey, they escaped from the country. Armenians had escaped with their souls and with their bodies, and many escaped. So you had to create a new capitalist class, and this should be Turkish. That's why they had to create a new culture, a new history, and a new language. For example, my name, Dirim, means life in Turkish language, and it was reinvented in 1936. And you can see in Turkey that a lot of words now today were invented, reinvented, better to say reinvented, because it has got background in ancient Turkish language. They were reinvented in 1930s. Creation of a new elite and creation of a new urban bourgeoisie. In 1938, Atatürk died. It was a time when there was the rise of fascism in Europe. Of course, it had got effects in Turkey as well. I mean, probably if we were in the war, in the Second World War, in 1939, we would most probably be on the side of Germany. But in 1945, we were included in the war. Just 2 days before Hitler's suicide, we declared war against Germany. Did you know about it?
Yes.
So just 2 days, 7th of May 1945, we declared war against Germany. And in that time, it was quite a bit funny because they were sending all of the communists to the western border of Turkey, where Germany could attack us, and they were sending all of those fascists or trans or nationalists, they were all sending it to the border with the Soviet Union. In 1950, we draw a new line in Turkey. I mean, now we have realized that we have got this Kemalist ideology good. We created a new bourgeoisie class, a new capitalist class, but it cannot go on like that because there were some orders from some other place. Because from that time, in 1950s, Turkey became to be part of a great project in the Middle East. Green Belt. Do you know about that? That the United States wanted to establish a green belt against Soviet Union, against communism, by supporting the Islamic regimes or Muslim countries against Soviet Union. And Turkey was one of them. It was a model country in 1950, a democratic in sense of American liberalism, and a secular country, Muslim, and 100% against communism, against Russia. I mean, probably if Russia was fascist, maybe we could be communist, I don't know. And US ally, the ally of the United States, was at that time in Saudi Arabia, and in southern parts of Arabic heartland, it was Wahhabis, and in Turkey it was the students of Said Nursi. Said Nursi was a person who died in 1960, but still, including our president and prime minister, they follow his works, his philosophical textbooks. But the army of Kemalist regime was not happy with this. They made a coup d'etat on 27th of May in 1961, but it lasted only for 3 years. And after 3 years, this Democrat Party took power again with the name of another party, Justice Party. And then the army had realized that they cannot avoid this neoliberalism, liberalism in Turkey, so they decided to be part of it. I mean, because this is army. I mean, army is the armed unit of a certain class in a society. So there was a formula now to unite everybody in Turkey. The formula was synthesis of Turkish Islam. So for the whole of my life, we studied that Turks, even before Islam, we had got monotheist beliefs, which is totally incorrect. And Islam was in our hearts, but luckily, thanks to Arabs, that we met with Islam, and we are Turk, but also we are Islamic, and we somehow united. They don't say synthesis, because synthesis involves thesis and antithesis. They say integration of Turkishness and Islam. They are against when you say Turkish-Islam synthesis, they will say, no, it is not synthesis, because in synthesis you need thesis and antithesis. But Islam and Turkishness are not antithesis of each other. In fact, it is. Because Islam doesn't involve nationalism. I mean, it's against nationalism at any source. And, I mean, this was also parenthesis. At that time, after Kemalist revolution, there was a tendency to ignore the heritage legacy of Ottoman Empire. But after 1950s, the Ottoman history began to be again popular, and it was even applauded by the Turkish nationalists. This is very funny because it was Ottomans who exiled you, who killed you for years, but now, as a Turkish nationalist, you say that we are the grandsons of Fatih, we are the grandsons of Yavuz Sultan Selim, we are grandsons of Süleyman the Magnificent. In 24th of 1980, it's a crucial point in Turkish history because there were new laws, implementation of neoliberal policies, following the route of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan in the United States. Turkey was dictated to implement neoliberal policies, but at that time, left opposition in Turkey was quite powerful, and they couldn't do that. So they needed a power, an armed power. And just after that, after 9 months, they made coup d'etat in Turkey, and it's probably the most successful coup d'etats in the world, which still, until recently, they were taking the country under control with their so-called democratic institutions. And this is our boys have done it. Is a phrase of this, is a motto of this coup d'etat. Sorry, because the American Prime Minister asked the chief of CIA, who did the coup d'etat in Turkey? And he said, our boys have done it. So, at that time again, nationalism began to be somehow, with the source of Islamism, began to be popular again in Turkey. And this time, the Turan ideology began to be popular again with the neo-nationalists. And the motto was not to Tokyo, but it was from Adriatic to the Chinese one. I mean, you can find a lot of similarities between establishment of Serbian national identity and establishment of Serbian Turkish identity. I mean, when I wrote an article about this, they claimed in Turkey that how can you make comparison between our good nationalism and with the evil nationalism of Serbs? Probably if some Serb will read this, he will say, how can you make this comparison, between evil Turks and the good almighty Serbs? So this was the megali idea of Turkish nationalism, from Adriatic to Chinese wall, because at that time, it was perfect time. In 1990, Soviet Union had collapsed. All of our relatives, all of our cousins in Central Asia, they were all free, and they were waiting for us to unite them. So we ran there. But we have realized that we don't even speak the same language. So our prime ministers, presidents made some common meetings with them, but they needed Russian translators. So, I mean, it was not working anymore. But believe me, I mean, I was a teenager at that time, and there were students coming from Turkmenistan to Kazakhstan to our high schools, I mean, okay, my friends were going to them to speak. I mean, I wanted to meet with them to speak about Komsomol, about dialectical materialism. They didn't know anything about it. And my friends were going there to talk with them in Turkish, but they couldn't understand anything at all. Only with some Turkmens we could understand something. So after 5 years, we have realized that those are Turkish relatives. Okay, they are our brothers, but probably we will not be doing something political with them. There is also a tragedy in Azerbaijan that Turkey was part of a coup d'etat in Azerbaijan against Haydar Aliyev. We supported Ebu Feyz Elchibey, and they couldn't succeed. I mean, and Ebu Feyz Erçbey was more closer to the Turkish nationalists, and Haydar Aliyev was more pro-Russian. So we thought that we could easily support a coup d'etat in Azerbaijan because we are a great nation, you know, 70 million population with a huge army. But we were, I mean, Turkey was unsuccessful in doing this, and it was also a time period when all the Turkic states, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, they also isolated Turkey from themselves because they wanted to go on their way with Russia, better than Turks. So, we had to find a new ideology. In 1995, 1996, around this time, this Neo-Turanism didn't work very well. So let's find something else. Neo-Ottomanism was a good project. So to turn back to Ottomanism, to unite all of our ex-empire lands, would be a good project. But there are some obstacles, because those who could benefit from this Neo-Ottomanism was too much Islamic. So we better to make a revision. Until that time, Turkey was the best partner of the United States, and only Islamic policies could make Turkey to be the best partner of the United States, and this new ideology was Neo-Ottomanism. The first time that this phrase, this concept of Neo-Ottomanism was uttered was by Greece in 1974, because they said that by occupying Cyprus, Turkey is following Neo-Ottomanist policies. So thanks to Greeks that we had got a new ideology. And in February 28, 1997, we have got a sort of post-modern coup d'etat in Turkey. I mean, it was not a coup d'etat with the tanks or panzers, but it was a coup d'etat from internet. You know, they made a declaration against the government, and the next day, some parliamentarians from the ruling Islamic Party had resigned, and they passed to the other parties, and the government fell down, and the new government established. And suddenly, at that time, they captured Abdullah Öcalan, the leader of the Kurdish movement, in Kenya. I mean, they say our intelligence service did it, which is, I don't trust very much. And then they made some sort of a renovation in the Islamic Party. And the new guys, after this coup d'etat, the new guys of this Islamic Party, youngsters, they established a new party, AKP. Tayyip Erdogan and his friends, Tayyip Erdogan was then mayor of Istanbul, and he was in prison for 6 months. And then he established a new party, which was leaving those archaic thoughts of Islamic philosophy, but they came with the motto of conservative democracy. Their motto was conservative democracy, which worked very well in Turkey. And in 2002, they got the power in Turkey with 35% of the votes. Today, they hold 50% of the votes. And this is our Sultan, the first Recep Tayyip Erdogan. I mean, he says I'm not, but he enjoys very much, because wherever he goes, he's welcomed by the people. Welcome the last Sultan, you know. And he says, I don't support that kind of things, but it's visible that he very much enjoys that. I'm sure that Ahmet Davutoğlu would enjoy it more, you know. In inner politics, I mean, this is what you don't see very often. I mean, most often when I speak with some people, especially with some people of anti-imperialist background, they enjoy the discourse of Tayyip Erdogan in international politics. But what did they do? Today I would like to speak more about this subject, but I thought that it would be better to speak about history, to understand Neo-Ottomanism today better. So first, they began by polishing the history. That Ottoman Empire, our history, was full of successes. That our ancestors, I mean, which probably you should also see from your history textbooks, Boston, Crud, or Serb, whatever. And they even recreated history. They recreated history. That, you know, suddenly the letters between Sultan Süleyman and the French Empire appeared, you know, that even in Abdülhamid, at the end of the empire, we were strong, but it's because all of those Western countries that they didn't want a strong Ottoman Empire in the region. That's why they divided it into many pieces. And they use popular media very well. I mean, now something like 150 journalists in Turkey are in prison. If not in prison, then you will not be given credits. If not, you don't need credits, then any industrial holdings will give you money for advertisement, for advertisement, for reclam. And there is now a new perspective of teba. You know, it became something like this. For example, yesterday there was a photo of a rector in Turkey. He was kissing the hands of a businessman who is known to be very close to the government because he helped to the university. They want that kind of a society. I mean, do you know what is their social program? Their social program is not to find work for the people, but to give them coal before winter. So we call it sadaka policy. I mean, the politics of sadaka. I mean, you know what is sadaka? So instead of, I mean, now the citizens, now the citizens do not have right to work. They don't have right in social security system. I mean, they have to pay in the hospital, they have to pay in the schools. But if they need something, they have to go to the local office of AKP or local municipality and ask for help, ask for sadaka. Now they made the whole society to beggars. We have to beg for everything. And the rector begs for some help to the university, and because of this help, he's kissing the hands of a businessman. This might be the end of academia. But in 2009, when everything began to be established, you know, the basis for the new policies, international policies, were established very well. Ahmet Davutoğlu's concept of Neoosmanizam. He doesn't use this concept, but in his book, I mean, he calls it strategic depthness. But he simply establishes the Neo-Ottoman policies. Do you know about this Davos crisis between Recep Tayyip Erdogan and the Israeli Prime Minister? Do you know? You don't? Yeah, he left. It was a very good show, you know. I mean, he had a problem with, was it Isaac Rabin? No, not Isaac Rabin, but what was his name? This old guy. Benjamin. No, not Netanyahu, he's younger. Isaac Rabin, I think. Anyway, the Israeli Prime Minister was talking about something, and then our Prime Minister, suddenly he became very angry. He became very angry, and he said, 1 minute. 1 minute. You know how to kill people better. You know how to kill people better. You call me here to talk, but you don't give me permission to talk. You are a killer, you are a murderer, and he left. And then after that time, he was the hero of the whole Middle East. Because until that time, I mean, all the leaders in the Middle East except Gaddafi, or except Saddam Hussein, were just collaborators with United States imperialism. But now, for the first time, that a Muslim leader was in front of everybody, he was having a dispute with the Israeli government, and he was leaving the table. I mean, if I was a Palestinian citizen, if I was a left-wing Palestinian citizen, I would admire him. I would admire him. He knows it very well. He knows politics. He knows how to talk about it very well. And it was 2 months after that, he was saluted as being the last empire, being the last sultan of Ottoman Empire. But when you come back to the country, now you see 600 students are in jail now. 600 students are in jail. Just follow the, I mean, unfortunately, you have to follow the news from Turkey, from the Anatolian Agency, which is the voice of the owner. I mean, you only get the news about how the Turkish economy bursts, it goes, increases. How we are effective in the Middle East. But they don't tell anything about how many people died in Turkey because of accidents in workplaces. It exceeds the people who dies because of terrorism. And during that time we had got conflicts. I mean, I always have fun, you know. Always, every week, on Monday we have got new crisis with another country. 1 week we have got a crisis with France, the other week we have got crisis with Italy, the other week we have got crisis with USA. But I call them theatrical conflicts, theatrical crises. Because it is not followed by any political impact. For example, just to give an example, the municipality of Istanbul is from AKP. And until recently, 3 years ago, they changed the name of a street. The name of the street was Algeria Street. They changed it into French Street, and they made it like a street for pubs. I mean, they didn't officially change the name of the street, but now everybody recognizes as French Street there. So, That's why it's only theoretical conflict. They had got conflict with France, but we didn't have any problem in economical basis with France. We had got problems with USA, but except Russia. I wrote here. We never have got theoretical conflicts with Russia because Putin takes it seriously, you know, so it can have got some serious effects. This is the reality. And, for example, until 3-4 years ago, we had got excellent relations with Iran. We were even in the peace talks between Iran and the International Agency of Atomic Energy. You know, they wanted to send all of this nuclear waste from Iran through Turkey to Brazil. So we were somehow like referee, and we were referee between Syria and Israel. But now we are, okay, we are not in conflict with Brazil. I mean, luckily they are not our neighbors, but we would probably if they would be our neighbors, but we are all in conflict with all of our neighbors, with Iran, with Iraq, with Syria. For example, now Turkey, you know, those Palestinian citizens, they love Turkey now very much. I mean, in the Palestinian flag, in the side of this red triangle, now it's very common that in Palestine they put Turkish crescent and star. Of course, those Turkish Syrians has got also a lot of effects. They love Recep Tayyip Erdogan very much, but they don't know that. Soon, I mean, they began to do it in Malatya, in southeast Anatolia. They began to establish the radar complex of defense shield against Iran. So it will be something like this. If Iran wants to bomb Tel Aviv, when they send rockets, our radars will recognize them, and the rockets will shoot them above Syria or Iraq. So, I mean, we say 1 minute, you know how to kill people, but we will defend you. So, go on your job. But nobody knows about that issue. Nobody knows about that issue that we are supporting, we are defending Israel. And okay, those rockets can hit us, but, I mean, they can hit Diyarbakir, they cannot hit Ankara, but they can hit some certain parts of Turkey. But okay, we will protect our ally. I mean, our allies' brother, Israel. And AKP was a very good model for Arab Spring, for Tunisia, for Libya, and for Egypt as well. I mean, because they were administered by those archaic leaders, Nasser, Gaddafi, Assad. So now they realized that before that they were afraid that there will be some radical fundamentalist regimes in Libya, or there could be some radical fundamentalist regimes in Syria. But now there is a new model. They said, if we will switch Libyan government, there can be this Erdogan model. We switched the government in Tunisia, and instead of this archaic ex-government, now we have got a new government which is welcomed by the people. And this model works very well in Turkey. They are never against us. They never conflict with us. They do everything which I say, but they are also very happy to which we give. And what do they give to us? They say, you are regional power. Ahmet Davutoğlu, go to Bosnia. You go to Serbia. You speak with them. You will be regional power. And Ahmet Davutoğlu is very happy, so that he's establishing the Ottoman Empire again. But everything can be only done with the promotion from the United States. This is it. So, at the end, okay, I don't need 10 minutes. Maybe I will give it to the audience, because this is the last word. That, I mean, today, I just wanted to speak. I just wanted to, in sum, I just wanted to show you that Turkish identity is not the same with Ottoman identity. I mean, first there was the Ottoman identity ignored, Turkish identity not only ignored but killed, tried to kill. And then, again, there was the revenge of Turkish identity in the beginning of the 20th century by establishing the Republic. And now there is another revenge of Neo-Ottomanism. Again, in inner politics, their aim is to create a new elite. Because the old elite, I mean, now probably you watched in the news that there are problems between the Turkish army and the government. I mean, most of the people in Turkey, especially social democrats, they think that army is the only defender of republic. But no, army is the only defender of the army. I mean, I have never seen an example in a nationalist, in a capitalist, in a liberal country, that army is defending its own people. Army only defends itself, army, and its class. And in Turkey, they were defending the old elites, prior urban bourgeoisie, but now there is a new elite. Abdullah Gül is from Kayseri, from village. Recep Tayyip Erdogan is from the outskirts of Istanbul. All the members of the cabinet, they all have got, let's say, Papa origin. And now they say that we want the government. And last year, in August, they made a deal with the army. They changed all of the generals, and they put 130 of them into prison. And now, army is in their favor as well. So, Neo-Ottomanism is not more than the ideology of the new class, and it's not more than some collaboration of United States imperialism. So that was what I wanted to do today. Of course, now if you have got questions, we can go further on Neo-Ottomanism. I don't think that you would deal more about Turkish background in Altay, but if you wanted to ask me the questions, you are free to ask. So, thank you.
Okay, now we're open for the questions. Anyone? No one? Maybe I would like to ask you more about this. How real is the influence of AKP in Turkey in terms of Arab Spring, in terms of political parties that are in Tunisia or Egypt? How real is it? Is it like only presented as such, or there is something in the core, you know?
In Turkey, we have got a proverb that the hungry cock thinks that he's in the storage of corn. So this is the story of Turkish internal affairs. That, I mean, they think that they are giving directions to the Arab Spring, but in fact they don't. It's very simple because the new Neo-Ottomanist ideology awoke very lately. I mean, just 1 year before the Libyan uprising, Recep Tayyip Erdogan got an award from Muammar al-Gaddafi, just 1 year before, award of human rights. And just 1 year before the crisis in Syria, Recep Tayyip Erdogan's best friend was Bashar Assad. I mean, they have got photos together, you know. And every once in a while, Bashar or his wife was coming to Turkey, or Ahmet Davutoğlu was going to Turkey. I mean, we were so much close like Turkey-Bosnia, just imagine that, I mean, something like that. I mean, even we get rid of visas for each country. I mean, you could go to Syria without visa, they could come to your country without visa as well. I mean, just between Antep and Aleppo, there were not buses, but there were minibuses, you know. I mean, like taxis, you could go from those cities 45 minutes. I mean, it became like a province of Turkey. We had got such close relations. I mean, province of Turkey, not in terms of political influence, but just how you could go there. I mean, I could go to Syria easier than I could go to any other province in Turkey. So, but things changed a bit after Libya. For the first 3-4 months, Turkey stayed silent because we already had got good relations with Muammar al-Gaddafi, and we didn't want to support any uprising against Muammar al-Gaddafi. And then the United States called Ahmet Davutoğlu to New York, to Washington. And they called him, and then afterwards, Recep Tayyip Erdogan went there, and they learned what they have to do. So they turned back, and they said, they suddenly became aware of the human rights assaults in Libya. They suddenly became aware of the tragedy in Libya. And then they sent ships not to take only the Turkish citizens from Libya, but also to take wounded rebellions to Turkey. I mean, even now in Istanbul, in Antalya, there are lots of Libyan warriors. They come for holiday, those as award. And 2 or 3 days ago, I read in the news that they even began to have some fights between each other in Turkish cities about money issue, that kind of problems. So in Libya, Turkey was not affected, but Libya was a turnout for Turkish internal affairs in Arab Spring, because they found out that this Arab Spring is what is wanted by the United States, and we have to support it. So we have seen in this experience that the Turkish international politics is not that much intelligent as they think. I mean, they should have foreseen it from their perspective. They should have foreseen it 4 months ago, 5 months ago, and they should, from the beginning, they should say that Muammar al-Gaddafi is evil. He has to go. But no, they say it after. I mean, it's not as late as our declaration of war against Germany in 7th of May, but it is somehow similar, you know. After everything was clear, made clear, then we began to be against the government of Gaddafi. But everything is different in Syria. Because of the lessons that I'm saying we, but in fact it's Turkey. I never consider myself as among them, but consider we as Turkey. After Libya, we began aware of this Arab Spring, and we did everything earlier in Syria. And we support the Syrian paramilitaries. I mean, you can see, for example, not in Aleppo, but in Homs, in the peaceful demonstration of the opposition, that they use rockets, you know, against the government forces, and believe that 90% of those rockets had passed through Turkey. Now there are camps on the border of Turkey and Syria, and almost something like 40,000 Syrians live there, and most of them are warriors, and they go to Syria, kill people, and then come back to Turkey again. And their families are under protection of Turkey, but for international community, they are refugee camps. So in this sense, Libyan crisis was a turning point for the Ottoman, but now, after Libya, Turkey began to be affected, but only under the provision of the United States. I mean, probably, if the United States didn't have problem with Syria, we couldn't do anything there.
Okay, if there's no more question, okay,
ali moramo ovo jako kratko sada jer je vrijeme za drugo predavanje, zaista. Okay.
More of a comment than a question. Should I use my...
Okay, then.
I mean, thank you for the clarification. If it could be well, a friendly critique, you know, this would be sort not in terms of the content, but it is some sort of essentialist critique of the essentialist claim to the notion of Turks. But it is not quite a critique. Something completely different.
If you want to kill, you can.
No, I don't want. I just want to add something which would be very interesting. You know, there is also the Western history of the use of the notion of Turks. Just, you know, you see Ratko Mladic in the clip in The Hague, and he tells about Turks. You know, he fights Turks. This is Turks is also an empty signifier. You know, and with a history, with the Western history, with history of the Western use of the notion. And of course, this is how Ratko Mladic tries to inscribe emancipatory cause into an imperialist warfare in contemporary Bosnia. You know, to try to sell it as a repeating of emancipatory struggle against the Ottoman Empire in the 19th century. But you will also find, you know, he inscribes himself into a Western history. You come to Vienna and you will see there's Türkenschanz. It's a toponym. It's because of, you know, in the 17th century Battle of Vienna, but they also at that time called the Ottoman Empire army the Turks. So there is a Western history of and the notion of Turk as the enemy from the East. You know, of course, it has nothing to do with this as essentialist, with your deconstruction of essentialist claims. But it could be, I mean, it is an idea that one can do an analysis of the Western concept of Turks, which has nothing to do with all of this, but with some sort of Western cultural identity and use and misuse of emancipatory cause in anti-imperialist, for instance. Okay, it was only a comment.
Thank you very much. And maybe I made a mistake because I'm not sure, but most probably most of the audience, and me as well, before being academically involved in those issues, we were all guided by the Western historiography. I mean, what you read about Turkey should be written by Western historiography. What I read about Bosnia is written by Western academics within the concept of Western historiography. So maybe in the beginning, I had to warn everybody that until now we were under the effect of Western historiography, but I will be looking from more essential point of Turkish history writing legacy, heritage. So in that sense, you are correct. I mean, it is not only bound to Bosnia, but also if you go to Italy, to the museums, you will see that in their maps, they also mention Ottoman Empire as Turkish Empire. And in Vienna, if you talk about Ottoman Empire, they will know nothing about it. They will say, no, the Turks were here, Ottomans were there. And yes, you are right, that in Vienna, there is some effect. And they have got different conception of Turks. And there are somehow, there is the work of Maria Todorova. Maybe you know. Yeah. I mean, for me, this is a very good book about a deconstruction of Western historiography of Balkans, because it's not only about Turkish history, it's also about Serbian history, it's also about Bulgarian history. And moreover, there is also a recent book of Bojana Jesenik from Slovenia, The Wired Balkans. So I'm not talking about in this Balkan context, and they are good examples of how to deconstruct Western historiography, and in that sense maybe I should begin my presentation, but that this is not under the effect of Western historiography. I'm trying to rescue from that. So thank you very much for your critics.
Okay. I think this was a wonderful and spontaneous way to introduce the next lecture. In fact, that was our next lecturer, Boris Buden, who will speak, in fact, about society, a nation, and how we were during the 90s gone back to the darker stages. We will have a break of 5 minutes, and then please come back to the next lecture. Thank you.